On February 1st, President Trump imposed 25% tariffs on nearly all goods imported from Canada. Since then, his administration has engaged in an on-again, off-again trade war with our longtime ally. The tariffs were imposed based on the exaggerated claim that millions of criminals and tons of deadly fentanyl have been pouring over the border into the United States, and that Canada has allowed it to happen. Last month, we went to the northern border to the Shazy River, where even in the middle of winter, migrants continue to cross its frozen banks, often guided by human smugglers who openly advertise their services on Facebook and TikTok. If President Trump and the Canadian government really want to tackle illegal immigration there, they might want to start online.
The story will continue in a moment.
Search for border excursions on TikTok and Facebook, and you'll find a black market set to music that guarantees migrants safe passage across the northern border. There are posts in Spanish, English, and Punjabi.
Hello, Hanji Sashikal Sareno.
And reviews like you'd find on Yelp. These men in the back of a car on their way to a new life in the United States give their smugglers 5 stars and a thumbs up. Stretching more than 5,500 miles, the U.S. Canadian border is the longest international land border in the world. That's the U.S. on the right and Canada on the left. In February, we traveled to an area the U.S. Customs and Border Protection calls the Swanton sector, which runs from New Hampshire to upstate New York. Last year, more than 80% of migrant apprehensions at the northern border happened here. The Swanton sector is where this video was recorded in January. A group of men who just crossed the border ran to an SUV that drove them deeper into New York. You'll also see a woman getting out of the car and go north to Canada. This man told us he coordinated the handoff and took the video. Can you tell us who you work for?
Cartel.
For the Sinaloa Cartel.
He goes by the name Javi and agreed to speak with us only with his camera off. He said he can't risk his identity being exposed. How does this work? They tell you where to go? They tell you how many people you have to bring across each week?
Exactly. That's how it goes. They provide the people. They have more people who are behind all this, looking for customers, finding them, and summoning them to certain locations.
We found Javi through his online ads, which he says TikTok recently took down. In a conversation with our producer, he did briefly turn his camera on and allowed us to record his masked face. While it's not possible to verify everything Javi told us, he sent these pictures of what he says are his guns as proof of his ties to the Sinaloa cartel. A source in Canadian intelligence told us Javi's story is consistent with the cartel's human and drug smuggling operations. The Sinaloa cartel is one of the largest and most notorious in Mexico. These are videos Javi sent us of his work. He says he's part of a team of 4. Some drive migrants to and from the border and plan logistics, while Javi says he guides people through the woods. The migrants pay about $3,000 each. Javi told us he makes about $1,000 per person. $500 go to the cartel, the rest to the drivers. Some smugglers offer discounts for children. What's the youngest child you've ever crossed?
3 months.
3 meses.
Yes, babies.
What happens if one of the migrants you're working with doesn't pay?
They cannot go. They're held hostage until they pay up.
Until what?
Until they pay.
Do you work only with humans or do you move drugs also?
Everything.
How much fentanyl do you move across that border?
Lately, it's been quiet, but for a while there, we were bringing in 30 kilos per month.
Wow. The drugs come from de China?
From China.
De China.
I get more into the U.S., but also it goes from the U.S. to Canada, and weapons.
A lot of fentanyl comes through.
How many pounds of drugs come across the northern border into the United States is unknown. President Trump claims tremendous amounts of fentanyl pour into the country through Canada. Last year, U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized 43 pounds of fentanyl at the northern border, compared to more than 21,000 pounds confiscated at the U.S.-Mexico border. And while the southern border saw 1.5 million illegal crossings last year, there were fewer than 24,000 illegal crossings from Canada.
See this wood line up here on the left? They come from way over there on the other side of, back side of Canada and walk along the edge of that wood line. And the wood line continues and goes down to the creek, then they would follow the creek.
Sheriff David Favreau oversees Clinton County, New York, which includes about 28 miles of border.
Where are the smugglers in all this?
They're hiding. They're the cowards that are just taking the money, not caring about the people that are crossing and what hazards those people might run into. So they're the ones that are just running the business and collecting the cash.
Last year in the Swanton sector, there were more illegal crossings than the previous 17 years combined. More than 19,000 migrants were arrested there. They came from 97 countries, mostly from India and Mexico. And they cross year-round, even through blizzards. In the middle of winter, authorities respond weekly to 911 calls from migrants. In January, 6 Haitians, including a 9-year-old girl, became lost in the woods and some were hospitalized with serious injuries. Last month, this man from Spain suffered severe frostbite. Sheriff Favreau took us down a local road divided by the border. The area is covered by surveillance cameras on both sides. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police saw us and soon after drove by on patrol.
When someone is crossing in the dead of winter and there's feet of snow, what are they up against out there?
They're up against a lot. The worst thing that they're up against is the freezing cold, because the temperatures, you're walking through the snow, your pants are getting wet, your boots are going to start soaking through eventually, and they don't even realize they're so desperate and so quick to try and get to where they want to be that they don't realize frostbite is setting in, and that's one of the biggest dangers.
The case Sheriff Favreau says he'll never forget is the death of Anna Flores. Residents of Champlain, New York, erected a memorial in honor of her and her unborn baby. The 33-year-old supermarket worker was 5 months pregnant with her first child when she and her husband flew from Mexico to Montreal in December 2023. They found this Colombian man who advertised on TikTok and hired him to guide Anna across the border. Text messages taken from court documents show they paid him $2,500. Anna's husband asked, "Is it safe?" "Well, look, truth is, the only certain thing in life is death, but we are effective." On the evening of December 11th, Anna began her walk alone through the snow. The alleged smuggler tracked her by GPS on their phones and texted directions. It was dark and the temperature was below freezing. Anna's husband had a visa to work in the United States and was waiting for her in New York. He wrote, "Have you already picked her up? She is crossing, friend." "I am very nervous," her husband said. 40 minutes later, the alleged smuggler wrote, "Bro, hello, I think she got wet or turned off her cell phone." Investigators think Anna was following his instructions when she stepped into the icy Shazy River. She was already in America. 3 days later, park rangers and Sheriff Favreau's deputies found Anna's body. The alleged smuggler was arrested at his home in Quebec by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police at the request of the U.S. Justice Department. He was extradited to the United States in February. He pleaded not guilty to smuggling charges and is being held at the Clinton County Jail. Sheriff Favreau says that's the type of coordination that should happen between neighbors.
I find it unusual that up here along the northern border, with all the attention that we've had, I haven't been contacted by anybody at a federal level, really, other than the Border Patrol. We work hand in hand with the Border Patrol.
But you've not heard from Washington, from the White House, from anybody in the president's administration who have been looking intently at your border here?
No.
This 6-time elected sheriff, a Democrat, does credit President Trump's immigration policies for the drop in illegal crossings that he's seen at the northern border. And while Sheriff Favreau welcomes a lull, after 43 years in law enforcement, he says the quiet rarely lasts.
Today, our state of mind is, when is something going to happen? That's the big concern, and that's always in the back of I think every law enforcement member's mind, when is something going to occur? When the numbers are down, it gets eerily quiet. We kind of worry about quiet. We like it when things are just steady so that we know what's going on, have a better handle on it.
You don't trust the quiet, that it's going to stick.
We just don't trust that quiet is going to stick.
We didn't ask for this fight, but Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves.
Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, retaliated with tariffs in response to President Trump's tariffs. But the Canadian government did concede to Trump's complaints about the border and announced a nearly $1 billion plan to strengthen border security by adding more boots on the ground, helicopters, and drones, and appointed a fentanyl czar.
Are tariffs the answer?
The tariffs have disrupted relationships between our two countries, both economically and socially. I mean, I don't see Canada as really being the issue here. Yeah, the border needs to be secured, but there's better ways of doing it than threatening your largest and longest standing partner.
Professor Kelly Sundberg spent 15 years as an officer in the Canadian Border Services Agency and now researches border security at Mount Royal University in Calgary.
We've done a lot of great steps in trying to keep the border open. On the Canadian side, we have fallen short in keeping it secure. We do not have a border patrol such as the United States. We have very few officers. So equivalent to ICE, so your Immigration Customs Enforcement in the United States, which has thousands of officers. For our entire country, we have 400. Clearly, if we're going to address the concerns of President Trump, let alone the concerns of many Canadians also, is we need to increase those numbers.
You'd like to see more.
For the number of cases that we have, I've calculated we probably need around 4,000 to 5,000 officers nationally.
Last month, Canada and the United States, on the same day, declared the Sinaloa Cartel a terrorist organization. We spoke to Javi again this week, and he told us the cartel has since had to change the way it moves drugs across the northern border. But the designation has not affected how many people they smuggle into the United States illegally.
What has the return of Donald Trump meant for your business?
There's always going to be business. Later on, Donald Trump's time will pass, and this will continue. This is not going to stop.
If they put more Border Patrol officers at the border, if they put more checkpoints, is there anything anyone can do to stop you from moving people across the border?
No,
Nada.
no, nada.
There's always a way. The border between Canada and the U.S. is much bigger than the one with Mexico. You can always get in.
You'll find another way.
Siempre.
Always.
What 60 Minutes learned about smuggling people into Canada from the U.S. at 60minutesovertime.com.